All right, good afternoon, Senate Judiciary Committee. We're going to call this meeting to order. The purpose of this hearing is on the issue of the confirmation of three appointments of the governor to three different state positions. One is the Office of Administrative Hearings. One is the Department of Corrections, and one is the Office of the Guardian Ad Litem, as you've heard. And so we will do three of those Senate confirmation hearings here today. We'll start with the Office of Administrative Hearings. I think we have J.C. Demers with us. If we can, please come forward, Mr. Demers, and join us here at the front. It's great to see you. To those watching and following along with the meeting, as everything goes when we're active in a legislative session, there's impromptu meetings and different obligations. So I understand we are starting a little bit later than 12 o'clock on the dot, but that's how life goes here when we're in session. So for those watching and again, paying attention, this will be a fluid process, and we'll get to you in the order as listed on the meeting agenda. We appreciate your patience and cooperation. I intend that each interview will take approximately about 20 minutes or so, depending on the types of questions from the committee members and information that the conferees would like to share with the committee. And so we, again, as indicated, we'll start with the Office of Administrative Hearings. And so we have J.C. Demers to the position of the Office of Administrative Hearings, and he has been nominated by the governor. There is some type of script here that I'm supposed to be reading, which is making it particularly awkward. I'm not sure that that's required here, but I am going to administer the oath, which evidently we have to do here. So Mr. Demers, if you would please stand up and raise your right hand. And this is pursuant to the authority of Wyoming Statute 28-1108. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give before this committee will be the truth?
I do.
Wonderful. All right, and Mr. Demers, with me today, as you can see with their name tags, this is Senator French, who is newly elected and appointed to the Senate Judiciary Committee. Immediately to my left is Senator Kolb, the same, and to my right is Senator Cost. The good Senator Cooper, who is absent for today's confirmation hearings as he's attending another committee meeting over this lunch hour. So I understand that there is the governor's office here who has asked to make introductory statements, and I think Ms. Anderson is live on Zoom, and so is the Chief of Staff, Mr. McVeigh. I'd welcome both of you into the committee room on Zoom. I think you both are here. Mr. McVeigh, if you want to start your video, it's sometimes easier for me to see when you're ready to speak and not speak. You feel free to unmute yourselves, and we will start with either one of you who would like to go first.
My name is Betsy Anderson. First of all, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. Betsy Anderson, I'm the Deputy Chief of Staff and General Counsel for Governor Gordon. And before I get started, I would like to ask the chair, does she have a preference as to chairman, chairwoman, madam chair, how best to proceed?
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any and all of those are fine. I find it's just easier for everyone to just say chairman so that they don't feel more nervous about it than they should. So chairman is just fine.
Perfect, thank you. So yes, I wanted to introduce Director Demers, who is the governor's appointment for director of the Office of Administrative Hearings, which we fondly call OAH. The director graduated from the Citadel in Charleston, South Carolina, and receiving a business administration degree, and then went on to law school at the University of Wyoming. When he graduated from law school, he actually worked for the Attorney General's office for a couple of years as an assistant attorney general with a primary responsibility for the Public Service Commission. After that 2-year stint, he went on to active duty in the United States Marine Corps for 3 years, where he was a detailed defense counsel and then chief defense counsel as a judge advocate at Marine Corps Air Station New River. The next year, he went on to active duty again in support of Operation Desert Storm. When he came back, he then set up his own practice for about 15 years, here in Cheyenne, where he had an emphasis on civil litigation and administrative law, but also served as a special assistant attorney general with regards to workers' comp matters, representing the state. During that period, when he had his own practice, he actually had active duty for 2 years, from 2008 to 2010, where he served in Afghanistan, training, assisting, advising elements of the Afghan National Army, and where he was awarded the Bronze Star. Also, while he had his own practice for 10 years, he served part-time as a Wyoming Air National Guard member, where he eventually served as a state judge advocate, and which required planning and allocating legal resources to serve the organization. And he supervised 7 military attorneys and 4 paralegals. In 2017, he closed up his practice and went back to work for the Attorney General, serving as a senior assistant Attorney General. And in that role, he was worked mainly with the Department of Workforce Services and workforce compensation matters. The governor appointed him as director last year, and I would just state, Director Demers had quite a few strong quality and traits, but I know one of the things that Governor Gordon focused on was felt very that he's very thoughtful, has a very strong legal background, which we felt would lead to very well-crafted, clear, and well thought out opinions, which certainly is important for the state and for the people in the state to understand the decision and the basis of that decision. So I know that was a strong factor for the governor's decision.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. I might ask you just a couple of questions as well for new members to the legislature, and also by way of background as to this practice of Senate confirmation hearings. Since I've been in the legislature, it's my understanding that historically they have not been done often, and there has been a desire throughout the last few years to actually start conducting those hearings just to provide a more meaningful process and a more meaningful consideration of our constitutional and statutory obligation to approve the nominees, and just to make it feel more official. And so we can back up our votes that we've actually met many of the nominees and can clearly articulate how and why that confirmation is or is not occurring. And so I just want to kind of back up and understand why some of those are there. And so, Ms. Anderson, when the governor is asked to make an appointment, and particularly in this case of OAH, is there a requirement that this particular director have a Juris Doctorate and be a practicing attorney? And is that's part of it? And what additional qualifications or other applicants were considered? Is it a typical job opening where applicants are received or resumes are received through the Department of A&I? Can you just kind of give us a brief background over that?
Madam Chair, yes, certainly the first step is the statutory requirements for any position. And at this point, I can't remember because it was last summer, but even if a JD was not required for this position, I do feel like the governor felt like it was important. There's basically legal analysis is what the OAH officers do, and they do provide these opinions, which is something that everybody goes on as they go through their life and they go through their work. And so it's important to really have some clear decisions and well thought out, and it is all based off the law. It's a lot of workers' comp and driver's license revocations, all based in statute, and so those are important factors. And we did, we did interview several candidates, and so that I think that, and as I recall, I believe all the candidates held a JD when we interviewed them.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Mr. McVeigh, anything from you?
Good afternoon, Madam Chairman. Buck McVeigh, Chief of Staff. It's really an honor to get to be a part of this. I don't have anything further to add that Deputy Anderson has already spoken on, but I will speak to the point of a personal character. I've known Mr. Demers for a very long time now, and as Deputy Anderson has mentioned, we did interview, and I don't have an exact number of candidates that we did interview, but clearly Mr. Demers, he was very spot on his answers, and we felt very confident in appointing him to this position. So.
Mr. McVeigh, just out of curiosity for this position or any other position for the gubernatorial appointments, going back to my question, how do the names get submitted to the governor's office? Is it just, are they asked to submit an application, or is there a formal opening? How does that look?
Madam Chairman, that is a very interesting question, because for positions like this one, it really wasn't a posted opening, to the best of my knowledge. We had people that were knowledgeable about this position submit their application, but we ended up maybe with 3 or 4 applicants for this position, being it was a fairly I think sought after position. So, but the internal positions, the candidates, I think they may have sought out other candidates to apply for it. So the internal people, anyway. So with that, I'm kind of at a loss for words on that. But,
and Chairman,
I can post it up.
And I can chime in again. When it comes to the cabinet members, the governor does a lot of reaching out to people he knows for their thoughts, advice, and recommendations. Certainly people, this was very public because the prior OAH director was appointed as a judge and by the governor, and that's a very public process. So most people in the legal community, and I have looked it up, it is a statutory requirement that they are a member, good standing in the bar. And all the candidates we interviewed were attorneys. But so we did have some people reach out to us that way, but there is a lot of just contacting people that he respects and he knows well to get their opinion, their advice, if there are people that they think would be good for the position.
All right, thank you, Ms. Anderson. Thank you, Mr. McVeigh. Questions from the committee for the governor's office? All right, seeing none, we'll get to the man of the 15 minutes. Mr. Demers, wonderful to see you. Thank you for being here today. I understand that this is an unusual and somewhat awkward process. So bear with us as we all kind of navigate what is an atypical duty of the Senate. So welcome, and give you an opportunity. So much is being talked about you here. You can tell us a little bit about yourself if you'd like to introduce yourself to us and share with us about who you are and your role as the director of the Office of Administrative Hearings.
Thank you. Is it permissible to remove my mask? Okay, thank you. Thanks. Good afternoon, Chairman Nethercott, members of the committee.
Mr. Demers, if I can, just another moment of housekeeping. The microphone, the green light should be on.
It is.
And then pull that microphone up close.
Thank you. Thank you. So I originally came to Wyoming, and I think about 1980. Originally, I came out here to Roughneck. I went to law school here. And after that, I went to work for the Attorney General's office. Then I went in the Marine Corps. I got married while I was in the Marine Corps, and we returned to Wyoming after my first tour. And I'm blessed with a wonderful wife and 3 wonderful daughters who I've raised here. I worked for the Attorney General's office originally when I got out of law school, and then subsequently, as I indicated, I went in the Marines and then actually, I went back to work for the Attorney General's office, and then ultimately, I when I left there, they hired me as a Special Assistant Attorney General to continue representing the Wyoming Workers' Compensation Division. And I went into private practice, which included a variety of cases, primarily focused on administrative law and litigation, but also some general practice. Then I returned to the Attorney General's office in 2017. For those 3 years, I worked as a supervising attorney for 3 attorneys and 2 paralegals. And then also we had a number of contract attorneys who also act as special assistant attorney generals who are overseen by that office. And subsequently, I applied for the Office of Administrative Hearings, and that's why we're here. Thanks.
Wonderful. And I'm going to refer to you as director.
Thank
That's fair. And am I pronouncing it correctly? Is it Demers or Demers?
you. Either one is fine, but Demers.
I understand. I'll answer to all and the above, so I appreciate that. And so, Director Demers, why were you interested in the position? What about being the director of the Office of Administrative Hearings appealed to you? So if you'd share with us your desire for the position.
Sure. Well, I think my work history shows that I've always been interested in public service. In terms of the Office of Administrative Hearings, I can literally state that I've done over 3,000 administrative hearings during the course of my career, primarily representing the state of Wyoming. And it's obviously, I felt that my skill set matched the position and my experience matched the position. And it's a very important service that the Office of Administrative Hearings provides to the state of Wyoming, because there are a lot of different areas that are heard by that office. And I think that it's really important that the state have good and professional handling of their cases and the people and the agencies that appear before us.
Director, I understand that based on your work history and testimony that you represented the state for much of your career
Yes.
in cases before OAH. And so when you became the director, you obviously preside over cases where the state is a party, and then there's another, probably a petitioner or a respondent that is a party as well, who is not the state. And so can you walk me through how that may or may not be a conflict, and if it is, how you have handled it so far?
Thank you. Well, and in general, the test for attorneys is, for government attorneys going to other work, it's whether or not you've had substantial involvement in the case that you're going to be subsequently involved in as a government attorney. In this case, it would be whether I, at the Attorney General's office, had substantial involvement in the workers' compensation cases that come before us. And clearly there were some that I did have involvement in. And one nice thing about working with attorneys is they all understand conflicts of interest, and they all understand the concept that if I had involvement in those cases, we don't talk about them. Some of the cases I did do assign, but that's the limit of it. We don't talk about them, and they decide them based on their merits without consulting me. In terms of representing the state in a conflict, really the whole time that I represented the state, my goal was never anything other than people getting workers' compensation benefits that they deserved and not getting benefits. I shouldn't say deserved, that they're entitled to, and not getting benefits that they're not entitled to. I don't think that we ever took any positions other than that. So in that respect, there's no emotional conflict. Still the same concern. I want people to get benefits if they're entitled to them, and not get benefits if they're not entitled to them. In terms of workers' compensation hearings themselves, I've pretty much limited myself for the present time. That may change in the future. But the office in 2020, the office did approximately 1,000 cases. I wasn't there, obviously, the whole year. So we do a lot of, they call them all other cases, which are any agencies besides driver's licenses and workers' compensation. And then there are 2 other types of cases that we're required to hear, one of which is teacher terminations and the other is state personnel actions. Other than those, the all other cases are cases where agencies ask us to hear their cases. And we have the option of taking those or not taking those. For the most part, we've been able to accommodate all of them.
How many attorneys do you supervise?
Currently, there are 4. We're looking to get a 5th, and then there are 3 contract attorneys, and then 4 administrative staff.
And when I use the term attorneys, are those really hearing officers?
They're all hearing examiners, and yes, all attorneys.
And I am the only attorney on this committee right now. And so it would be helpful if you could share with us just briefly what that means to be a hearing examiner.
Thank you. As a hearing examiner, these are administrative hearings. They're slightly less formal than judicial cases or court cases. The rules of evidence don't apply, but there is discovery, there is testimony, there are opening statements and closing arguments, and the hearing examiners conduct the cases basically from the beginning, which is lots of times getting counsel together. There's an order setting hearing, there's an order requiring disclosure by the parties, and then usually there's a pre-hearing conference and then a hearing. And then at the hearing, the parties both present their cases, and then at the end of the hearing examiner makes a decision and enters findings of fact and conclusions of law and issues an order on the case. And one of the purposes of findings of fact and conclusions of law, very important purposes, when people, if the case isn't decided in their favor, at least it's very clear to them as to why the decision was reached, what facts were relied on, what law was relied on. Thank you.
Committee, do you remember hearing that term earlier this morning? Findings of fact and conclusions of law? Good. All right. Side note, we had an amendment where we added that term in, and something that the Office of Administrative Hearings is certainly familiar with. And so that findings of fact and conclusions of law is the examiner's order. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it has the full force and effect of law, as you indicated.
Yes,
Similar, just like a judge. Is that correct?
it does. And then the people have 30 days to appeal the order to the district court and then ultimately to the Supreme Court if they're not happy with the decision.
And approximately how many cases is the Office of Administrative Hearings presiding over or conducting?
I'm not sure of the number that we're currently presiding over or conducting. As I indicated, in 2020 calendar year, it was close to 1,000 cases. It was a little shy of 1,000 cases. In terms of how many are currently pending, I'm sorry, I just don't have that number.
And Director, 1,000 cases, how many days approximately are each one of those hearings?
Most of them are less than a day.
And do you provide those services across the state or just here in Cheyenne?
The services are provided throughout the state of Wyoming. Since COVID, there's been a lot more remote hearings, and they seem to work very well, actually, be it by telephone or be it via the internet. At least my perception in doing hearings is I feel like I can get a pretty good handle on what people are saying. When it's by phone, you listen more to their voice. And but whether or not that, there will undoubtedly be some changes once this COVID pandemic is over. But currently we're doing a lot more hearings remotely. And it also saves on travel, but ideally, and then some cases we're still doing in person, depending.
Does the agency have all the technology it needs?
Currently, we haven't encountered any obstacles that we couldn't meet with the technology that we have.
Did you receive any CARES Act funding?
No.
Did you want to?
I'm not sure. Oddly enough, there may have been some CARES Act savings for us in a sense that we haven't been traveling as much as we normally do.
Certainly. And, you know, do you know the agency's budget? Do you find that will be sufficient for you moving forward? I know you've indicated a need for potentially another hearing examiner.
Yes, and actually, we've been short-staffed since I got there, but we had some turnover. So I think that we were fully staffed in terms of hearing examiners for about 3 weeks. But so that position, yes, it's already in the budget to fill it. And in terms of our budget, I think that we're fine. Thank you.
Senator Cost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I'd like to thank you, Mr. Demers, for your service to our country. I appreciate that. And secondly, with this job, I'd kind of like to know, what do you see as your greatest challenge and your goal in taking on this position?
Chairman Nethercott, Senator Cost. There are some wonderful things, which is my predecessors, I think, were very thoughtful people. And a lot of things are set up the way that they should be. The machinery's there, that they are set up to get cases through. The hearing officers, we have, I think the hearing officers that we have now are really good hearing officers. So in that respect, I'm blessed with what's already there. In terms of challenges, there are always challenges when there are changes. And I'm a real believer in gradualism in terms of changes. And part of that is because you don't just have the internal staff, but you also have your customers. And making small changes and slow changes is always better, in my opinion. One of the things that we are trying to do now is we're actively trying to encourage and facilitate settlement through settlement conferences and mediations a lot more than has been done in the past. And I think that serves a public good. I think people are generally, not across the board, but generally people are better off if they can get their cases settled. And for example, last week I did a wage case and there was a disagreement between the employer and the employee. And I held a settlement conference and they got it settled. And at the end of it, I realized it wasn't just about money, that they had a relationship. And I think they were all relieved that they were able to get it settled and resolved that way, as opposed to going to the mat.
Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Chairman Nethercott. Give me permission not to use chairwoman. It's always confusing in this world we live in. First off, I would like to thank you for your service and hoorah.
Thank you.
Next, I guess the mask thing was gone. I really appreciate that because I have a really hard time evaluating anybody unless I can see their face and not from the eyeballs up, but the face down. So thank you for I guess asking that question. I don't know, what are you going to do? I mean, what is your special purpose in life? I mean, your goals, your ambitions? I mean, this is the year 2021. And obviously in all these decades we've had, obviously, I think this office in place for this purpose. What would you like to do differently? Or are you just going to carry on? I mean, it's up to you. It's an open-ended question. I don't know if you want to just, maybe if I could just have you ask these particular questions one at a time, because they're going to be maybe a few of them. I don't want you to go, backtrack or get, I don't know, get any confusion. So
Let's start with one at a time.
Chairman Nethercott, Senator Kolb. Well, currently my only focus is to make the Office of Administrative Hearings as good a hearing body as I can. And I mean, I guess one of my strengths is that I do focus on things. And in terms of that, it's simply a quality of decisions. It's a quality of the hearings. It's treating everybody with courtesy and respect. But again, these things have been going on. This isn't something new. And giving everybody a fair and impartial hearing. So in that respect, it's almost like a court. I mean, what you do is you hear cases and you help people resolve their cases.
Okay.
And I hope that's responsive.
Well, I realize these are kind of open. It's up to you how you want to answer them.
Thank you.
And I know I sit up here as obviously I seem to be an elected official, but I'm not much of a bureaucrat. So I ask things as a businessman, like I would interview anybody for a job that I was, wanting to know more about. And then, what's your passion in life? What do you like doing? History Channel, or do you? Who are you? Director.
Chairman Nethercott, Senator Kolb. I guess I'm a husband, a father, a family member, a friend of people. I think I enjoy most days. I enjoy my work. I think I've always been, well, my wife would say I'm a workaholic. I'm not sure I would describe myself that way, but I do work a lot. And I tend to be interested in what I'm doing. I mean, currently reading legal cases, I find it interesting. I'm interested in politics. I'm interested in world events. So
That's great. And then maybe I was a little confused about the office size and the new position that you're seeking. Is it the same as the office size you currently have with attorneys and paralegals or whatever amount of folks you would manage?
sure. Currently, there are 4 attorneys and 4 administrative staff, and then 3 contract attorneys, and then what I'm looking to hire is another in-house attorney, another in-house hearing examiner here in Cheyenne.
Okay, so it's similar.
Yes.
Okay. And then if you have an office issue, there's always disgruntled employees. I mean, that's just a fact of life. When you get a lot of people together and working together, you're going to have disagreement. How would you handle disagreement within your office? I mean, what's your style?
My style in general is, I think that most people with positive encouragement eventually will do their best. In terms of leadership, I believe in leadership by example. I believe that if you work hard, and certainly if you're going to ask people around you to work hard, you should be working hard. If you try to be responsible, they're going to be responsible. If you make an extra effort, they're going to make an extra effort. But in terms of, I guess part of my leadership style or my leadership approach is to try to get the river moving in the right direction. And once you do, most people will move with the river. It's not always the case, but usually that's how it works. And in terms of my career, I found that that's usually how it works. It doesn't always work, but usually.
Well, if there's an office issue, right? And you're forced to resolve said issue because of change of leadership, right? Which happens a lot in every facet of life. And the new regime comes in with new people, unfamiliar people, and you're inevitably going to have pushback to any sort of change that, especially in the government. This is the way we've always done it. If someone feels a little different, it's like, well, it's resisted. They meet it with resistance. So particularly with that kind of situation, with an issue where an employee of yours, a subordinate, be less than cooperative with a change. Director.
Chairman Nethercutt, Senator Culp. First of all, and this is just my personal tendency, it is one of patience and hoping that people will come around and eventually get on board. If that can't happen, then other measures need to be taken. Okay. Less pleasant measures, perhaps.
Thank you for your candor.
Thank you.
Did you develop the patience with 3 daughters?
Chairman, it certainly helped.
All right, Senator French.
Madam Chair, I don't have much to add. I just would like to say to you, Mr. Demers, that you seem like a very highly qualified individual. And I would like to compliment you on your service and dedication to Wyoming and to the country. Highly commendable. And thank you for that.
Yes, sir.
And I really don't have anything to add. You seem like a highly qualified individual for this.
Thank you.
All right, any final questions? Director Demers, thank you so much. Give you an opportunity to make any final comments that you'd like. This is it. I know all of this kind of momentum for such a short interview, but we do think it's important to walk through this process. So final comments from you.
Thank you. And I think we've gone through most of my work history. So what I would simply like to say is I know you all are busy, and I know that you all have some very pressing issues this session. So I thank you for taking the time to interview me. Thank you.
All right, thank you so very, very much.
Thank you.
Members of the public and director, we are not taking votes on individual nominees today from this committee. When the Senate votes in total, we'll be able to share with our colleagues what we learned from these hearings, but we won't be doing a vote here today. It requires full Senate confirmation, so that's the vote. Okay. All right, thank you. All right, I believe next we have is Director Shannon, Department of Corrections. I saw him in the hallway. And I think, yep, Director Shannon. Good afternoon, Director Shannon.
Mr. Chairman.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You know what to do here. You're standing. Again, we're going into our second Senate confirmation hearing over the lunch hour, and this is for the confirmation of the Wyoming Senate for Dan Shannon to the position of the Department of Corrections, for which he has been nominated by Governor Gordon. Director Shannon, this is where my script says to introduce the members of the committee. We will do that in short order, but first I'm going to administer to you the oath. If you would raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give before this committee will be the truth?
I do, Madam Chair.
Wonderful. Please have a seat, Director. And now, as you get situated, I'll introduce the members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, of which I think you're probably familiar, as you've had an opportunity to appear in front of the committee this legislative session, representing some interests of the Department of Corrections. But as a way of reminder, to my far left is Senator French, newly elected and a new member of the Senate Judiciary Committee. To my immediate left is Senator Kolb, newly elected as well. And to my right is Senator Cost, who has been on the committee for the last few years. And you probably recall him from appearing in front of the committee as well. Senator Cooper is unable to join us as he's currently in other committee meetings over this lunch hour. So just as a point of order, my script also says to allow you to make for an introductory statement, but I do know that the governor's staff is here, and I think they would like to take the opportunity to introduce you, their appointee. So with that, I'll turn to Deputy Anderson and Chief of Staff McVeigh and let them take whatever turn they want and give them the floor at this time.
All right, thank you, Madam Chairman. This is a real honor to get to present and introduce Director Dan Shannon to you and the committee. It was an interesting process, really, to go through the selection of a candidate or selection of a director for this department. As you know, it's quite a big department, actually. Various sites. I believe there's about 5 different sites in the state: Rawlins State Penitentiary, the Honor Farm, Newcastle Women's Prison in Lusk, and then the medium security prison over in Torrington. And especially coming on the heels of the former director who had been in that position for a great deal of time. There were big shoes to be filled, and we took it very serious. Obviously, with the retirement of the former director, word got out that position was open. It's kind of a, as I learned, kind of a interesting network of prison officials across the country. So we did have some pretty good interest in the position. I will say that Mr. Shannon emerged as by and far the best candidate for the position, and I would just like to speak on some of his qualifications. Mr. Shannon was first appointed by Governor Gordon to be an interim or an acting director of the Wyoming Department of Corrections in July 25th of 2020. I served in that role up until the point where we determined after visiting with the other candidates that the governor then appointed him permanent director. But Mr. Shannon comes to us with 35 years of experience, and it's wide-ranging experience in the prison system, both in Pennsylvania and in Wyoming. As I found out, Dan started work, I believe, with the state in 2007, coming in as the warden of the Women's Center in Lusk. He worked in that job until 2010. He was then promoted to the Prison Division Administrator in 2010 and served in that position until 2019, at which time then he was appointed as the Deputy Director of the Wyoming Department of Corrections up until the point of his appointment here by Governor Gordon. Mr. Shannon holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Administration of Justice from the University of Pittsburgh. I've gotten to know Mr. Shannon both professionally and personally, and I find his set of skills and his character very interesting. I don't believe I've ever known somebody so passionate, so experienced in his position. I'm just very impressed by him. He's very much a consummate professional and a total gentleman, and I'm very honored to have him as a member of our cabinet. And with that, I'll open up for any questions there, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. McVeigh. Any questions for the governor's office? Just a question, when the appointments are filled, here's a tough question. Is it communicated that it's subject to Senate confirmation?
Madam Chairman, yes, ma'am. It certainly is. They know it's kind of a contingency, if you will. We certainly hope to put forth the best candidate, one that is acceptable to both executive and legislative approval, if you will. So yeah, it is conveyed to them.
Good. Thank you, Mr. McVeigh. Ms. Anderson, anything from you?
You know, I think Buck's done a great summary. I will say that working with Director Shannon has been wonderful. I mean, he has done a great job with a very big and I would say very challenging agency, and has just been impressive what he's done so far.
Well, thank you both. I do think that the Department of Corrections comprises a large portion of our budget. Mr. McVeigh, can you speak to that at all?
Madam Chairman, not to the specific numbers, but you're absolutely right. And it's a very large portion of our budget, both in terms of manpower expense and facilities expenses. As we all know, throughout the years, we've been challenged by the facilities costs pretty extensively. But more than that, it became more of a personnel manpower kind of a challenge for the entire corrections operations. As you know, we housed a lot of our inmates in out-of-state facilities, and that's kind of where I want to highlight Mr. Shannon. He was we brought these inmates back into our state facilities during a very, very difficult time. Obviously, we were at the height of COVID, dealing with this pandemic, and we're bringing prisoners back from out of state facilities, and we really did it with Director Shannon. I was amazed at how I guess non-eventfulness that he did that. He brought those patients or the inmates back in congregate housing during a real difficult time. So just long-winded question, but I will say the manpower issue, we have faced a great deal of morale problems in the previous years, and with that, difficulty in filling vacancies for correctional officers and other staff at our prisons, and that's where it might be questions for you folks to ask. But I think Director Shannon has really righted a lot of the ship, if you will, and corrected a lot of those problems. So
Thank you, Mr. McVeigh. And with that, we'll turn to the man of the 15 minutes, Director Shannon. Director Shannon, was a lovely introduction from the governor's office for you, and a unique opportunity where praise is identified as being uneventful and unremarkable. But I couldn't agree more with the governor's office that I do believe as a vulnerable a situation as our Department of Corrections was with the pandemic, that we have weathered that storm with remarkable expertise. So just comment on that. So an opportunity for you to introduce yourself as you, the person and citizen of Wyoming, and also as your role of Director of the Department of Corrections.
Madam Chair, committee members, thank you for having me today. My name is Dan Shannon, Director of the Department of Corrections.
Let's make sure your mic's on. See that green light? And
I'll
then bring it up real close. Somehow I am,
I'll
by
wait.
osmosis, these old guys are making me deaf too. So I don't know.
I'll provide a brief introduction and an overview. Some of it may be repetitive to what the chief and deputy in the governor's office replied. To answer a few of your questions, the employees, we have 1,042 employees within the Department of Corrections, and how it affects our state budget. If our tier 3 cuts are accepted, which is $26 million, it'll bring our budget to $240 million. That's a very considerable budget, almost $250 million. That's what we're looking at. And to answer your question regarding the confirmation, there's a reason why we haven't filled the deputy director's position for the last 8 months. So I hope that answers your question. When you asked if there would be a Senate confirmation when you accept an acting position. So I kind of let that, I've worked hard.
Smart move,
Done
Director.
both positions for 8 months.
Very smart move. That's what we like to see, that those type of skills.
Madam Chair, Senators, if I just may have a few moments, I'll go over a few of my notes. As it was indicated, I'm a graduate of the University of Pittsburgh. I began my correctional experience in Pennsylvania in 1985. I have over 35 years experience. I started out as a parole officer, as an agent. I worked as a correctional officer, and I worked up through the ranks, both security as well as programming. In consistent applications and responsibilities, I moved up. And in 1994, I became a warden. At that time, I was the youngest warden in Pennsylvania, which I was a warden for a little over 12 years in Pennsylvania, the Pennsylvania system. I have certifications in hostage training, hostage negotiations, emergency response commanders, firearms instructors, a number of different things. I've also been on several service commissions as well as advisory boards. I bring to this committee and to the citizens of our state an exemplary work record. I've been active in organizations in my community They give back to as well as the Rotary, United Way. I've done it for a number of years. As I mentioned, in 1994, I was promoted as warden, a position I held for 12 years. And in 2007, I was recruited by Director Lampert to come to Wyoming. I accepted the position at the Wyoming Women's Center, of which I held for 3 years. How did I get to Wyoming? I didn't get here by chance, and I'd like to explain that. I grew up dairy farming in rural Pennsylvania. And from 1979 through 1997, my father and I came here. And I valued the culture. I valued the principles of Wyoming. And even though I grew up in Pennsylvania, Wyoming is my home. And even at the conclusion when my father could no longer travel with me, all my vacations and such were here. So I just didn't drop off in Denver with a nice suit on and say, here I am. That's how I got here. So I've put a considerable investment. As the chief indicated, for 9.5 years, I was the prison division administrator. During such time, we opened WMCI. All of our facilities became accredited nationally as regarding Prison Rape Elimination Act, as well as American Correctional Associations. I have no legal judgments, consent decrees founded against me or any responsibilities in the 35 years. I've never had a judgment against me. I may be overdue as a director, but as a warden and deputy warden, things of that nature, I've never had a judgment against me or my area of responsibility. I'm quite
That
proud
is
of
remarkable.
Yeah.
I mean, as an attorney and aware of all of that type of litigation, that is a remarkable feat.
I've certainly have had a lot of litigation filed against me through the years because of my positions, but I've never had a judgment or consent decree against me. Position, but I accepted it with humility when I was asked to be the acting director. I understand the responsibilities, the return to our citizens, the individuals, better than what they came to us. I've also understand the safety of our staff and our communities, as well as our victims. I've learned that through the years. I've experienced in cruel realities of life that some forms of correctional systems have, and I know what not to do. I'm here to work for the citizens of Wyoming within the confines of the policies. I'm not here to legislate any form of agendas, nor have I ever done that. My immediate plans, visions, and challenges. I recently revised the strategic plan for the Department of Corrections. I've done that into a 2-year plan, along with the 4-year journey. And my top priorities, or shall I say the department's priorities, are to ensure reasonable safety of all staff and those who are confined within this COVID pandemic. It's been an extreme, difficult, and challenging time for the Department of Corrections. Approximately 28% of our inmates have contracted COVID, and a little less than that with our staff. When I became the acting, we weren't testing, and it was easy to say, well, this is our numbers. And I had to make a decision. And if I'd have taken the lower road, shall I say, to only test those who became ill, I could comfortably report out, which we report out weekly. I could comfortably report out probably 7 or 8 individuals have contracted COVID, but we do mandatory testing every week. We do in between those weeks, we'll do samplings, and it really has helped us. To date, we've had 1 death as related to COVID. We publish on our website as well as into the media weekly our results. We will not put out the actual cause because that's to be determined by the medical examiner, and that's protected information. Things that we've done in March of 20, under Director Lampert, we began to isolate as much as we can. We wear masks, we do medical screenings, we do mandatory testing. I've worked with the companies to provide video imaging so families may visit. We provide through the companies 2 phone calls per week so they can have their contacts. We do allow compassionate visits when necessary. The main concern is to protect our staff and inmates because in a communal setting, there's really no ways to isolate that. We're going to fight this battle for as long as it takes. In corrections, where many individuals are the type that we take care of business and move on. That's just not the case. So we're going to continue to do that fight. That's my first and number 1 priority in my strategic plan of 2 years. My second priority is fiscal responsibility on how we can realign this department and complete our task and while we're running national standards. As I mentioned earlier, in tier 2 and 3, if accepted by the legislation, we will reduce our budget by $26 million. We've also reduced 83 vacant positions, and also 14 individuals in our executive staff lost their employment within the department. The department is about as lean as it could get. Budget office worked extremely well with us. They were asking for 20%, and it's just not possible. The Department of Corrections is as lean as it possibly can, Ben. I used the term at that time, it's the hinge pin. That's where we stand. And so.
Director, do you have concerns about safety of correctional officers as a result of being so lean?
I don't, Madam Chair, but I have a concern of work hours as well as overtime, which I'll discuss in a few moments. Our approach is to meet our goal is to restructure the housing opportunities. We don't have an inmate populace issue within our state. What we had was a reorganization of how we house our inmates appropriately during classification. So we had, as the chief indicated, that we returned our inmates, and we have approximately 250 beds left. What we don't have is the appropriate staffing, which has been for a number of years at the Wyoming State Penitentiary as well as the Women's Center. Now, our positions are staffed, all our posts are covered, all national standards are met, but we're doing it at a high cost for overtime. So that is an absolute necessity that I must address. It's been going on for years. We have two opportunities. We can reduce and rearrange the way we do business and house our inmates till we have the appropriate staff to house our individuals. Or two, we need to look at alternatives such as pay and things of that nature to recruit. We're doing actively recruiting. We have done for years. It's no one's fault. It's just a matter of the way we're doing business. So I would like to reiterate, I feel absolutely comfortable. We've met all standards. We haven't jeopardized any safety, but it needs addressed. That's my number 2 priority. And number 3 is I'm going to restructure the organization in central office on how we do business to support those in our field. We have 5 institutions. We contract with 3 adult community correction centers, and we have 23 field probation offices. So it's spread out quite a bit. Central office is here to work for them. It's not the other way around. And through those efficiencies, we clearly are going to be data driven. Not that we haven't in the past, but we really need to look. I'm well aware the Council of State Government's going to do a report out, I believe, to this committee on Friday. It'll provide a history with a final report out of justice reinvestments initiatives. And we work very closely with CSG. I understand that their contract is up in March, but they're going to be completing data and working with us for over a 2-year period. And we also may file for an additional grant to continue that. When appropriate, I strongly support alternative housing as well as opportunities to divert sentencing if all possible. I'm conservative, but also we can't just lock everyone up. We just don't have that. Regarding our CSG initiatives through House Bill 31 and 53, I may report, and I'm sure that you'll get a full report this Friday. We have 11% less revocations than we did in 2019, but we also had COVID. So let's wait till 2021 to get a real indicating of such. As I mentioned, we'll have the 2-year follow-up, and I remain on the forefront as a proponent of alternative sanctions when appropriate. When I reorganize the leadership to become more efficient, it's going to be based on support of the field offices. It's going to be based on morale and retention of staff. We need the information of things that we never looked at before. Yeah, we're looking at our revocations, but we are not looking at how we're doing with our ACCs. We're not addressing, we're saying how many people completed sex offenders, but we're not looking 3 years out and see how they're doing. Same with drug and alcohol classes. Madam Chair, I may report, and even though these cuts in safety is our priority, I may report we lost some beds as far as ACCs, but no programming as far as sex offender, drug and alcohol and such within our institutions have been cut. How we made our cuts were what was constitutionally required. That's off the table. Number 2, what must remain within our agency to ensure our mission is done. Then from there, everything else was on the table. So that's how our cuts were made. But I can report that our programming money within our facilities, as well as our substitute funding for external for our agents remains available. This 2-year plan will establish a firm foundation. I believe that's my responsibility at this point. Within 4 years, it's my belief it'll need restructured again to really examine offender success, which direction we're going. It'd be premature to do that now. And I believe where I sit in this chair today, I need to have a firm foundation for 2 years and where we sit. It's my intent to be a part of a team for a long period of time if possible, but if not, I have to ensure that the state's in a good position. Madam Chair, I stand for questions.
Director, thank you so much. Senator French.
Yes, Madam Chair. Mr. Shannon, if I may, a couple of questions.
Certainly.
Do you house out-of-state inmates? And if so, what do you charge those other states for their inmates? And what do you see coming down the line that maybe isn't a big issue right now, but that you see out there a number of years that, boy, this is something we're going to have to address? Thank you, sir.
Director.
Madam Chair, Senator French, we do not house out-of-state inmates. At the average cost, a community corrections, I'll give you an example for what we're charged, is $55 to $60. We recently housed our inmates for approximately 27 months in the state of Mississippi. Overall cost was about $112 a day with expenses. They may have charged $92, but the overall expenses. The reason that we do not house, number one, it is a generator of revenue, which would be a positive, but it's also a huge liability. And with that liability, as I said earlier, I would not feel comfortable adding additional pressure to our penitentiary with the current staffing levels that we have. I see a lot of constitutional issues, and it may be anecdotally coming down the road. We're addressing some of them, such as hepatitis C. Constitutional questions regarding gender and how they're treated. I'm working very diligently on a transgender policy. My biggest focus coming down the road is I believe the incarceration rate may continue to drop. At least we hope it does. But I think there's huge liabilities, financial liabilities coming up if we're not ahead of the game, such as constitutional rights. As I mentioned, healthcare, gender identity, things of that nature. Thank you, Senator French.
Thank you. Any question? Senator Kolb.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, thank you for coming in.
Thank you, sir.
I'm impressed by your ability to speak and your past history and your experiences.
Thank you.
I think you're, have a lot of qualities that I wouldn't even know how to question. But I did have a few questions for you. And one of them would be, I think my co-senator just alluded to the issue about outside prisoners coming in. And that's because in county jails, the cost per inmates or the cost for the overhead is fixed. So the more folks you bring in, you can drive those costs down. Correct. And then in that case, it goes in the general fund. So it's a common thing for a county jail to do, but apparently not so common for the state to do. On budget efficiencies, I mean, that's really going to be the key of it for what we've all got to deal with. You have changes you have to adapt to, and there's budget crisis, frankly, going on. And obviously, I'll tell you, I don't want to see any of the correction enforcement people hurt or endangered. So we have to come up with new, better ideas. I think you got a lot of good direction there, a plan, which maybe you don't hear of so much. And I do appreciate that. But I think we always got to be innovative and coming up with a new way to do what we've done before and not always revert back to we've always done it that way. And you don't seem to be that kind of person, which I'm very appreciative of. But on a note of the appointment, is this in fact, for all intents and purposes, a lifetime appointment until you retire?
Madam
Director?
Chair, Senator Kolb, if I may answer and make a few comments with your permission.
Sure.
No, the appointment, it'd be required, it'd be necessary to resign within 2 years of the next gubernatorial appointment. at the next election. And then it will be determined at that point if I would be kept or come back for another hearing.
Thank you for
That-
clarifying that.
That's where I base my decision on. These decisions that I'm making would be for this current appointment and what's the most effective way of getting the business done and prepare our state. If I may, when you spoke about the budgetary and different additional ways of doing business, Governor recently assigned House Bill 34. And what that permitted was a change in our youthful offender program. And so for years, we had our male offenders in Newcastle, and I'll try to lay this out clear as possible. Our female offenders, we accepted them, but we had to do it out of state. So with the change of that program by July 1st, what my intent is, we'll move those individuals from Newcastle. There was a 64-bed unit. We never had more than 23. They will go to WSP in a smaller unit separated from those adult offenders. Our ladies our ITU, which is in excess of 90 individuals waiting, those ladies will go to Newcastle and behind a secured fence, beside the double fence. That'll get all our numbers up as far as drug and alcohol treatment. Our ladies will no longer have to go out of state. We're going to do the youthful offender program at the Women's Center, and that'll take the pressure off the two other facilities. So I hope that answers your question. I'm doing the best I can to save budget and as well as being efficient, appropriately classified.
Yes, that's why I realize I don't want to ask a bunch of questions in a row. Then you kind of gets confusing. The federal position on COVID-19 vaccines for the inmates. Do you have any opinion about that?
I absolutely have an opinion. All vaccinations for our staff. I had an opportunity, and I reviewed it with the Attorney General's office as well as A&I. Could we mandate it? And I chose not to. I believe it's invasive. I received the vaccine, and probably it varied from institution to institution, from 25% to almost 45% of people that taken vaccinations. With our inmates, they reached a class 1C is where we're at right now. Those 65 and above, as well as inmates that have high health risk, have received the vaccination in all 5 of our facilities.
All right, thank you. And then lastly, what support do you need? What would you like?
Director.
Well, I appreciate it. Madam Chair, Senator Kolb.
Tough one.
Yeah, I would, what I would like I wouldn't use the term expectation, but I've already received it, is an open ear when there's issues. Because I don't know what's coming down the road, and at least to be heard, and then I'll make the adjustments from there.
Fair enough. Thank you.
Thank you for your question.
All right, any additional questions from the committee? All right. Seeing none, thank you so much for being patient and taking your time. I feel very confident at the leadership at the Department of Corrections right now, and the committee I've certainly watched, or an agency I've watched for the last number of years very closely, and feel confident under your leadership. Any final comments from you, Director Shannon?
No, Madam Chair, committee members, I appreciate you taking your lunchtime to meet with me, and regardless of your decision, it'll be respected. I promise you that.
Thank you, Director. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right. Well, welcome committee members and members of the public. We're on to our third and final confirmation hearing, and that is for on the issue of the confirmation for the Wyoming Senate of Joseph Belcher to the position of the office of guardian ad litem, for which he has been nominated by Governor Gordon. Mr. Belcher, welcome.
Thank you.
We will proceed with you taking the oath. If you'd please raise your right hand. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you give before this committee will be the truth?
I do.
Wonderful. If you'd please have a seat. It's good to see you this afternoon. I think you've watched and observed the other committee hearings, and so you know the format here and how this is going to proceed.
I did.
So with that, I will dispense of introducing ourselves to you since you've seen that occur, but we welcome you to the committee, and we will quickly turn over to Deputy Anderson and Chief McVeigh and hear their comments and introductory remarks for your confirmation hearing.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, thank you. I'm very pleased to introduce Director Belcher on behalf of the governor. Just to note, this is a new agency. And as I recall, I believe it was Senator Cost's bill that passed last year to create guardian ad litem as its own agency. Previously, it was housed within the Public Defender's Office. And there is some conflict to that situation, so it's probably best that it is set aside as its own agency. So this was not to replace an existing director. This was a brand new director for this agency. So Director Belcher is a native Wyomingite, born in Sheridan and raised in Rock Springs. He received a Bachelor of Arts in Marketing and a Bachelor of Arts in Secondary Education and a Bachelor of Science in Marketing. He left us for a little while and went to my hometown of Atlanta, so lucky him, to work for PGA of America. And he was in communications and then became a tournament director and did that for 10 years. Don't know why, but then he decided to go to law school, so he came back and he went to the University of Wyoming and got his JD. Immediately after law school, he actually was assistant general counsel at the University of Wyoming and Colorado State University, but very quickly migrated over to serve as an attorney in the guardian ad litem agency. He has been there for 10 years. So when he first came on, he was at some point became a supervising attorney for the 1st, 2nd, and 8th judicial districts, where he managed 4 people, and then he became chief trial and appellate counsel, where you deal with terminations and appeals, obviously, and he managed 8 people in that position. The governor appointed him last year when it became a new agency, and he currently manages a staff of 30 attorneys and 4 staff. And I would just note that the governor in making this decision, this is not an easy job, and you're dealing with families and children and emotions. But Director Belcher really demonstrated a passion for this. And so that was definitely an important factor for this job. It helped that he had 10 years of experience for setting up a new agency. And so having that background and knowledge is important, but certainly I think his passion is what really came through when we spoke to him about the position. So Madam Chair, I'll let you move on with your hearing.
Thank you, Ms. Anderson. Any questions for the governor's office? All right, seeing none. Mr. Belcher, welcome again, and give you an opportunity to just kind of introduce yourself and share with us a little about you, if you wanted to provide a little more information than Ms. Anderson, and why you wanted the position.
Sure. Madam Chair, committee, my name is Joe Belcher. As Ms. Anderson said, I'm a Wyomingite, born and raised in Wyoming, and proud to be from Wyoming. When I did move to the South, one of the things that Wyomingites like to do was when we were driving around, look for license plates from Wyoming, and you could see that bucket Bronco come down the highway, and we'd be honking horns at each other, and inevitably we knew someone who knew someone. So, and so I did graduate from the University of Wyoming, left that first time around, and an amazing opportunity to work for the PGA of America, and was involved in communications and media relations during the 1990s, and then moved on to tournament directing, where I was in charge of 4 or 5 PGA of America events in the Southeast. And so got to meet a lot of great people, a lot of famous people, play a lot of nice golf courses. Everyone asked why I left that job all these years. I wish I had a better answer than, I thought I was in love, and we, a bunch of us, we left our positions and believe it or not, started a women's apparel golf company based on the name of Babe Dietrichson. I don't know if you know that name or not, but she was a famous golfer in the 1920s who had a flair for dressing. And so we did that, and I got out of that and did some consulting work for Brooks Brothers and Nautica, who thought they wanted to get in the golf business. And then once that, I was kind of done with that, and my father had passed away in 2000, and it was just time to come home to Wyoming. And I went back and finished my education degree and went to law school. And during law school, I worked for the Office of General Counsel. Enjoyed that. I thought that was going to be my career path. And things change. I worked at the University of Wyoming, then accepted a position at Colorado State. And I was there until 2009, and that was that first economic downturn, if you remember that. And I was first one in, or last one in and first one out. And so a friend of mine was the deputy director of the Guardian Ad Litem program at that time. And she said, "Why don't you come work for me?" And I said, "Sure." And didn't really know a lot about Guardian Ad Litem work at that point in time. And I remember having a conversation with her, and she just says, "I just need someone in Gillette. Can you just go up there and kind of straighten things out?" And I said, "Sure." I'll give you a year. And she goes, "That's fine. That's all I need." And 10, 11 years later, here I sit, passionate about Guardian Ad Litem work. Never thought this would be the legal field I'd fall into, but I'm so happy that it found me. I'm really excited about the Office of Guardian Ad Litem and about where we're going to go and where we came from.
Well, that's wonderful. Thank you. Any questions from the committee at this point? Tell me again, Mr. Belcher, how many attorneys do you oversee? I think I heard 30. Is that correct?
We have 30 total. We have 6 are state employee attorneys and 24 are contract attorneys. Madam Chair, those contract attorneys range from a 10 caseload up to 80 caseload plus.
Senator Cope.
Thank you, Chairman. Few questions. I guess the first one, I'm just as an ex-county commissioner, I'm kind of curious about how you folks get along with the public defenders and that the relationship, if it's controversial, and also do you have an office in all the, say, counties with the public defender? And if so, did the county have to provide you then with another set office and set you up in a separate space? It kind of.
Madam
Belcher?
Chair, Senator Cold. I'll take the second part of that. We are in 22 of the 23 counties at this point in time. We do not operate in Goshen County. And per statute, yes, the county has to provide office space for the Guardian Ad Litem. If they do not have office space, then a stipend is required by statute. I think it's $750. As far as a relationship with the public defender's office, it's fine. There's not a relationship issue. It was just more of a conflict of interest issue that really was problematic. As you can imagine, we're representing a child who has been abused or neglected, and then essentially our coworkers are on the other side of the table representing the parent that did the abuse or neglect. And so that was the issue.
And then as it might relate as a follow-up to Chins, is there some, I understand it's potentially a situation that's maybe not so smooth between JL and the Chins representation. What's your feelings on that?
In regards to having a public defender on the chins, or just the chins in general?
In general, in the relationship to the public defender, to this situation?
Sure.
With the,
Madam Chair, Senator Kolb, in Chin's cases, we're not automatically appointed by the court. And so there has to be a finding by the judge that the child's interests are adverse to his parents or guardian, or he has no parent or guardian to represent him. And so that's when we become involved. And so we obviously represent strictly his best interest, while the public defender, if he has one, is a direct attorney, so to speak. So basically act on the child's wishes is what the public defender is there for. So we really get involved in chins when we see younger chins, children with mental health issues, not just strictly a behavioral, he took off and broke curfew type of thing, but more behavioral type of problems in school and those type of things, where a guardian ad litem really has that experience to navigate if placements are going to be an issue and those type of things, where the public defender really doesn't have that experience or that time to handle those issues.
And one more question about the GAL. In the past, I thought it was the county that funded it, and they used the district court judge with their discernment to have a GAL that would represent that interest. And apparently with this change of the program through the good Senator Cost, I'm assuming that doesn't exist anymore.
Madam Chair, Senator Cobb, that was kind of the process way back before the guardian ad litem program was under the Supreme Court, where it was just kind of a case would be brought forth by the county attorney or district attorney, and then the judge would determine a guardian ad litem was needed, and then they would go through the Rolodex and hire a guardian ad litem for the minor. The issue became it was lack of experience on people that were representing children. Maybe cases were staying open too long so that billing could be filled. And so, there's just all sorts of problems with having just knowing what was going on and having good quality guardian ad litems. And so that changed in 2008 when we got codified under statute as part of the public defender's office.
And Mr. Belcher, I think one piece to Senator Kolb's question is the counties still pay a portion of the cost for the GAL, and the state also pays another portion. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And so that all remained the same.
It does.
What is the budget for the Office of the Guardian Ad Litem?
We're roughly around 5.4 million, Madam Chair.
And can you just give us a general overview of how that's broken down?
The majority of our funds are dedicated to our 900 series, which is paying our contractors. That takes up the brunt of our budget. I think we're roughly at 2.3, 2.4 million paying our contractors. And the rest is broken down with our state employees and then office and personnel staff, such as we have 2 paralegals and a fiscal manager.
And Mr. Belcher, I understand that you're from Gillette. Have you moved down to Cheyenne, or do you plan to move the offices to Gillette, or what's happening there?
No, you're Madam Chair. I've been down in Cheyenne when I was the chief trial and appellate counsel. I moved down there, so I've been in Gillette since September 2019.
What are the challenges for the agency moving forward? Well,
like everything else, it's budget at this point in time. after being appointed by the governor, I took, about 60, 90 days and kind of just got a 30,000 view of the program, where I envisioned it going, what I wanted to do with the program going forward, and created what I called a 18-month action plan, which would go to next July 1, 2020. And so as we have contractors all over the state, really those are our pieces that fall off and come on. And so we tend to lose those contractors that are carrying caseloads roughly around 10 to 20 to 30 cases. Our contractors that carry higher caseloads, they seem to stay with us for a long time, as does our state employee contractors. And so in regards, I would like to see, if the budget one day can handle it. I like to put another full-time state employee guardian ad litem up in the Bighorn Basin area, kind of that V from Cody down to Thermopolis and over towards that way, over towards Sheridan. We have roughly about 7 to 8 contract guardian ad litems that operate in that area. And so they do a good job, but I think that's one place where we can do a little bit better. Certainly over on the western side of the state, I'd like to move some pieces on the chessboard around that makes more financial sense for the program. And Madam Chair, one of the things that I have stressed to our guardian ad litem since I've been named the director is that kind of the buzzword and with the feds are using in child welfare is high quality legal representation and a high quality legal guardian ad litem office. And that's what we're going to strive to be. I want our GALs to come into the courtroom and be the expert in child welfare law. One of our issues that we see as we go across the state is the variance of expertise in child welfare law from new prosecutors to new guardian ad litems to even new judges. And so we want to make sure that our people can be the expert in the room and can answer questions and make sure that all the I's are being dotted and T's are being crossed, because a lot of that is there's money involved into that. There's attached to it, and such as 4E money. And so we want to make sure we're doing right by the state and by our clients.
Senator Cost.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having passed the bill, and part of the agreement was that wasn't going to change funding and all, because that was never the intent of it. How do you see moving forward your best solution to that problem without having to increase the funding?
Madam Chair, Senator Cost, one of the exciting things in child welfare law is a couple of years ago, the Children's Bureau kind of reinterpreted the 4E funding statute that they kind of said that now 4E funding can be pulled down through the state 4E agency to not only to reimburse the state agency, but parents' representation and children's representation. And so currently we are doing that. We are working with the Department of Family Services. Quarterly, we submit, it's kind of backwards, we submit a number of kids that are non-4E reimbursable, and then they take that out of their numbers. And so right now that's averaging about $50,000 a quarter. We think it's going to stay probably roughly there. They're going to change the definition of, it's going to be children eligible for foster care. So the Department of Family Services is working on that definition, but that money is to be a supplement, not a replacement for the guardian ad litem agency. So we're hoping to use that money, and we can move that and kind of do some of these things that I envisioned with that 4E money.
Has the Office of Guardian ad litem experienced any cuts?
During the first round of budget cuts, Madam Chair, we lost $400,000. And with that, we had to give up a number of contract positions.
Senator Cole?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Particularly, you talked a lot about expansion and, growing, and I'm wondering how the heck do we pull that off in a time of lessening budgets? So could you explain, I guess, how you could do that?
Mr. Belcher?
Madam Chair,
Where's the
Senator
money?
Cobb. Well, it's a vision. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but maybe with some of this 4E money that I mentioned, that we can do some of this so-called expansion without growing. How's that?
And Mr. Belcher, the 4E money is federal money, is that right?
It is, Madam Chair. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so that's the vision, is to use that and not ask you all for anything at this point in time, because as Senator Cost noted, that was some of the things that we had talked about when the bill was passed last summer, that we wouldn't balloon up to a bloated state agency. And so I'm dedicated to holding that mission. And so it's just kind of rearranging deck chairs on the Titanic, I guess, if you will. So
Speaking of the Titanic,
Are we?
it's potentially, what are you going to do if it's a further cut next year, or the next biennium, I should say?
Madam
Belcher?
Chair, Senator Cobb, some that we always think about. I have thoughts on that, and certainly what it would be cutting contractors in certain areas that historically maybe had lesser caseloads than their other contractors. And so it would be first in line would be state guardian ad litems would pick up caseload slack, and then adjusting other contract numbers.
Thank you.
Senator Cost?
Thank you, Madam Chair. With your talking about having a stronger knowledge base for your people, how are you going to go about that? What's your plan for increasing that knowledge base?
Mr. Belcher?
Madam Chair, Senator Cost, that's something that we're already in the process of. We do a number of trainings. We partner with the Children's Justice Project to do right now webinars, so to speak. We train on anything from rules of evidence to just general case law updates to best practices. How does us advocate for your client? We have some trainings coming up that we're going to partner with the American Bar Association and do some courtroom training over Zoom. I'm not sure how that's going to look, but they think they can do it. And so, and we're also doing a little practice manual that a guardian ad litem can take into court with them. And that will have information that they can easily get to, such as case law, again, wording on that they need to be talking about in court, and those type of things, Your Honor, or Senator Cost.
Mr. Belcher, are guardian ad litems appointed to represent infants?
Yes, Madam Chair. So we do see that. We see particularly meth-borne infants that are just out of the womb, and we are appointed to them. And so, again, we represent them in their best interest.
Any final questions for Mr. Belcher? All right, Mr. Belcher, thank you so much for being here today and the work that you do on behalf of the state, representing those children who need the services of the guardian ad litem. Greatly appreciate that. Mr. Belcher, when the legislature calls, you should call back.
Yes, I had a sick little girl yesterday,
No,
so
I'm sorry to hear that.
but
And special
absolutely.
note from the Joint Appropriations Committee to call back them too.
I that's one thing we're working on. We're ironing that communication. So
Well, we appreciate that, and so will they. So thank you for taking your time today.
thank you for having me.
answering our questions and participating in this process again. We are not taking a vote here, but it will come out in the Senate confirmation. So thank you.
Thank you.
Senator Kolb.
Not really involving the applicant, but in a general statement. Well, I guess it does involve the applicant. It involves all applicants. You know, this whole process of confirmation and how it was conducted, frankly, I'm opposed to it because it puts you folks, you in particular, and all the applicants in a terrible position. It puts everybody in a bad position. I hear tell the process was different in years gone back where there was another an approval of a list. So you folks who are good people, all of you are good applicants, wouldn't be put through any sort of ringer, as it may be, for an unnecessary purpose. So I wish we'd go back to a process where we could have an open conversation, so we can better vet folks without having it come to, I don't know, this in some cases. So nothing an issue with the applicants. You guys are great. Everybody are good applicants, but I wish this could be done in a better process. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Best of luck next month. So.
Thank you, Mr. Belcher. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.
Okay, with that, committee members, we are convening back upstairs at 2 o'clock. So this meeting is now adjourned.